You know what's sad? That some of the smartest, most talented, most self-aware people can't seem to get out of their own way. They know exactly what they need to do. Wake up earlier, stay focused, stop scrolling, eat better, finish that thing they've been putting off. And yet, they don't do it. Day after day, stuck in the same loops. And it's not because they're lazy, and it's not even a motivation issue. It goes deeper than that. We like to think discipline is just about building better habits or setting clearer goals. But what if the real reason some people struggle with discipline has nothing to do with routines or time blocking, and everything to do with their inner world? This is where Carl Jung comes in. Not with hacks, not with hustle, but with insight into the psyche itself. Jung wasn't interested in productivity. He was interested in truth, in the parts of ourselves we push away, bury, or pretend don't exist. And the uncomfortable fact is, the part of you that's undisciplined may actually be the part of you that's unheard, repressed, or living in the dark. See, when Jung talked about the shadow, he didn't mean something scary or evil. He meant the parts of yourself you haven't brought into the light. The urges, the wounds, the emotions you judge or ignore. And your lack of discipline might not be sabotage. It might be communication. What if procrastination isn't laziness, but a signal that something within you is out of alignment? What if the inner resistance you feel isn't weakness, but a symptom of unresolved tension between who you think you should be and who you actually are? Jung believed we're all made of many parts, not just the mask we wear in public, what he called the persona, but also the rejected parts, the forgotten child within us, the archetypes we carry, and the stories we've inherited from our families and cultures. And until we bring these unconscious forces into awareness, they quietly run the show. Discipline, then, isn't just about pushing through. It's about integration, listening, making peace with the inner chaos, instead of trying to control it like a dictator. And the interesting thing is that sometimes the part of you that resists structure or consistency is the same part that once had to protect you, maybe by checking out when things got too intense, maybe by avoiding pain. That pattern didn't start with laziness, it started with survival. So before we even talk about fixing discipline, we have to understand what it really is. So stay with me, because we're going to unpack how the unconscious mind blocks us from following through, and how to work with it, not against it. We'll talk about self-sabotage, inner conflict, trauma loops, and yes, what Jung would say to someone struggling to stay on track. Before we continue, if you're someone who loves expanding your mind, challenging old assumptions, and exploring the deeper layers of life, make sure to subscribe to Fractal Wisdom so you never miss a video. So, let's get into it. If you've ever felt stuck in a pattern of knowing exactly what you need to do and still not doing it, don't be mad at yourself. You're human, and chances are there's more happening under the surface than you realize. The thing is, discipline isn't just a behavioral issue. It's psychological, emotional, and sometimes even spiritual. Carl Jung would say that when we're blocked, we're often facing a conflict between the conscious mind, the part of us that says, I want to succeed, I want to be better, I want to change, and the unconscious mind, which might be holding on to a totally different agenda. And guess what? The unconscious is way stronger. See, Jung believed the unconscious isn't just a trash bin for thoughts we forgot. It's alive. It holds memories, emotions, desires, beliefs, and most importantly, patterns. Patterns we didn't choose consciously, many of which formed in childhood through trauma, repetition, and social conditioning. So when you say, I'm going to wake up at 6 a.m. and start running every day, your conscious self is on board. But maybe your unconscious remembers years of burnout, or associates running with punishment, pain, failure. Maybe there's a deep-rooted belief that you're not the type of person who sticks with things. That belief might not be logical, but the unconscious doesn't work with logic. It works with emotion, memory, and symbolism. This is where resistance comes in. Resistance is the voice of the unconscious, trying to protect you, even if what it's protecting you from isn't dangerous anymore. Let's say you were a kid who got criticized every time you tried something new. Maybe you heard, "You never finish anything," or "You're not good at that." Over time, your inner child, a real part of your psyche, learns that trying equals pain, risk equals shame. So, as an adult, you avoid putting yourself in situations where that pain might resurface. You ghost your own goals not because you don't care, but because something inside you is scared to fail again. Jung would call this a complex, a cluster of thoughts and emotions tied to a particular theme. And when a complex is triggered, it can literally hijack your ability to act clearly or consistently. You might find yourself zoning out, self-sabotaging, getting too busy, or rationalizing why today just isn't the right time to change. It's not that you lack willpower, it's that there's an inner contradiction, a split between your conscious intentions and your unconscious fears. Jung said, "Until you make the unconscious conscious, it will direct your life and you will call it fate." And what does that mean for discipline? It means that to truly follow through, to be consistent, focused, and in alignment, you need to do more than push harder. You need to start asking better questions. What does this resistance want me to know? What belief or memory might be playing out here? Whose voice is this in my head really? Mine or someone else's from my past? What part of me is scared, and what does it need to feel safe showing up? This is the inner work. It's not glamorous. It doesn't look like a checklist or a fancy morning routine, but it's real and transformative. Because once you hear those unconscious voices, not to fight them, but to understand them, something shifts. The resistance loses its grip. You begin to act from a place of integration, not internal conflict. And suddenly, discipline starts to feel less like punishment and more like devotion. A commitment to yourself, a practice of remembering who you are and showing up for that person every day. But if discipline struggles are rooted in inner conflict, then where exactly is that conflict coming from? This is where Carl Jung's idea of the shadow becomes absolutely essential. Now, when people hear shadow, they usually think darkness, something evil, maybe even something to be ashamed of. But Jung saw it differently. The shadow isn't bad, it's just unknown. It's the part of ourselves we've disowned, rejected, or exiled, because somewhere along the way we were told, this part of you isn't acceptable. So we hide it, we stuff it down, we forget it's even there. But here's the catch. It doesn't go away. It lives in the unconscious, and it acts out. Not loudly, not always obviously, but in subtle ways that trip us up again and again. Here's a hard truth. A lot of people can't stay disciplined because there's a war going on inside them. One part wants to be good, responsible, productive, controlled. But another part, the shadow side, doesn't want to follow the rules at all. That part might crave chaos. It might want freedom. It might be angry, rebellious, wild, or deeply hurt. And when that part gets ignored, it doesn't disappear. It just sabotages from the back seat. Let's take an example. Say someone keeps breaking their commitment to wake up early. On the surface, they're frustrated. Why can't I just do this? But underneath, their shadow might be saying, you've spent your whole life trying to be perfect for other people. I'm done performing. I want rest. I want to be free. That's resistance rooted in an unmet need. And Jung's insight was this: until we consciously recognize and integrate these shadow parts, they will keep controlling us unconsciously. That's why he said, one does not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious. So if you struggle with consistency, maybe it's not about trying harder. Maybe it's about finally listening to the part of you you've been trying to silence, the part that's messy, emotional, disappointed, and honest. And when you begin to own that part, not act it out destructively, But acknowledge it, respect it. Something powerful happens. Integration. That's the real alchemy. Suddenly, you're not fighting yourself every day. You're aligned. You've got all parts of you pulling in the same direction. That's the foundation of true discipline. Not fear-based control, not self-punishment, but wholeness. And this changes everything, because once the shadow is integrated, you stop repeating cycles blindly. You stop ghosting your own potential. You move with clarity, not confusion. So now comes the real question. How do we actually work with all this? How do we turn understanding into transformation? Let's start with something simple, but profound. Awareness. Self-discipline begins with self-honesty. Not the kind of brutal, shame-based tough love we're used to. I'm talking about gentle, radically honest awareness. Before you can shift a pattern, you have to see it. Not just the behavior, but the emotion underneath it, the belief behind it, the story that's running on repeat. For example, if you keep saying you want to write, but never do, ask yourself, what does writing represent to me? What feelings come up when I even think about committing to this? Whose voice do I hear in my head? Is it supportive or critical? What would happen if I succeeded? And am I afraid of that? These aren't surface-level questions. They require you to slow down, breathe, and get real. And when you start answering them honestly, without judgment, you begin creating space. That space is where change happens. Now let's talk about shadow work. Shadow work isn't mystical or abstract. It's simply the practice of facing and reclaiming the parts of yourself you've denied. And that doesn't mean acting on every impulse. It means understanding where those impulses come from, what they're trying to tell you, and how they can be integrated in a healthy way. Let's say you discover that your resistance to structure comes from a younger part of you that felt constantly controlled, never free. That part might sabotage any form of discipline because it sees it as a threat to freedom. But once you understand that, once you sit with that younger self, acknowledge their pain, and show them that structure can actually be chosen, flexible, supportive, the resistance starts to dissolve. Not overnight, but gently. Discipline becomes a choice, not a cage. And here's something deeper. Discipline isn't about controlling yourself. It's about caring for yourself. True discipline, the kind that lasts, is born from love, from clarity, from a sense of purpose that comes not from pressure, but from alignment with your higher self. This is where Jung's work meets higher consciousness. He believed the path of individuation, becoming whole, was the deepest journey a human can take. Not toward perfection, but toward authenticity. When you begin to see discipline not as a punishment, but as a sacred act of devotion to that truest self, everything shifts. You're not forcing yourself to change. You're choosing to remember who you are again and again. So here are a few practical tools to take with you. 1. Track resistance, not just habits. Keep a journal or even a small notebook. When you avoid something, pause and ask, what's really going on inside me right now? Don't shame it. Listen. Patterns will start to emerge. 2. Have a conversation with your shadow. Literally. Write a letter from the part of you that resists. Let it speak. Let it rage, or cry, or protest. Then write back, from your conscious self, with compassion. This might sound weird, but it's powerful. 3. Reframe discipline as spiritual alignment. Every small action, every time you show up, becomes a way of honoring your wholeness. It's not about being productive, but about being in integrity with your inner truth. 4. Give yourself permission to go slow. Healing is not linear, neither is growth. Consistency doesn't mean never missing a day. It means coming back again and again with grace. 5. Surround yourself with depth. Create an environment, digitally and physically, that supports this deeper way of living. Follow voices that speak to your soul, not your ego. Build systems that support your nervous system, not your stress response. And finally, don't forget this. You are not undisciplined because you're lazy. You are complex, layered, full of stories and experiences that shaped you in ways most people will never see. And the fact that you're even watching this shows that you're ready to live differently, with more self-respect, more consciousness, and more heart. Jung believed that healing comes through integration, through becoming whole. And when all the rejected, silenced, misunderstood parts of you start moving in the same direction, that's power, clarity, and freedom. So if this resonated, let it land. Share it with someone who needs to hear it. And most of all, trust yourself. You're not starting from scratch. You're coming home to yourself. And if you're on a path of deeper living, shadow work, and mental clarity, make sure you're subscribed to Fractal Wisdom. Until next time, stay aware, stay kind, stay true.